program. On the line with us is Pam Grossman, the writer, curator, and teacher of magical practice and history, host of the Witch Wave podcast, the author of the latest Waking the Witch, Reflections on Women, Magic, and Power. PamGrossman.com is the website, and Phantasmaphile on Twitter, PhantasmaPhile, or Witch Wave Pod. And Pam, welcome to the program. It's kind of easy to trivialize this by saying, hey, it's Halloween and let's talk about witchcraft. But there really is, misogyny is an ancient thing. The domination and oppression of women and frankly, naked hatred of women by men in our society. And in fact, I was just reading over the weekend about the Salem witch trials of 1692 and 93, if I'm remembering correctly. Can you speak to that, please?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, it is so lovely to be back on your show. Thank you for having me, and happy Halloween, blessed Samhain, happy Witches New Year. All of the good stuff is happening today. But yeah, you're absolutely right. The witch is an archetype that I always say has one foot in the world of fact and one foot in the world of fiction, because our notion of witches comes from the land of mythology and fairy tale. But as we know, there have been centuries of people using the word witch to oppress and sometimes take the lives of thousands of people, particularly those who are women or on the feminine side of the gender spectrum. So it's still a word that is very loaded. It's an identity that some people choose, as I do, to take upon themselves in an act of reclamation and feminism. But it's absolutely still an archetype that we associate with unruly women.
What does it mean to say that you're a witch today? And what has the response been to you in that context?
Well, a lot of people use that word and choose that word for themselves because, like me, they might be a practicing pagan. So, as some of your listeners are probably familiar with, paganism is essentially a religion. I mean, it's kind of the easiest way of putting it, though not everyone who calls themselves a witch considers themselves religious. But for me, being a pagan person, as well as a practitioner of the spiritual path that is witchcraft, is something that defines my own spiritual path. And then I also use that word in a feminist context to really show that I'm someone who is taking a firm stance against the cis, heteronormative, primarily Christian fundamentalist patriarchy that is so oppressive to so many people around the world.
Now, paganism has been for centuries kind of a catch-all category of, particularly the old Catholic Church, efforts to stamp out paganism, destroy sacred sites, all those sorts of things all across Europe, all across the world,
sure.
frankly. But it's encompassed, as a definition, sort of everything from, old Viking, Thor and all that kind of stuff to what is the word for nature? Seeing God in all of nature.
Oh, Druids, you might be thinking
well, the
of.
Druids, or I was thinking of pantheism, but
yes.
And all of this stuff has kind of been rolled into this label of paganism, which has been largely a massive pejorative. What does it mean to you?
Well, for me, it is a path of noticing and honoring the sacredness of nature. And so it's about, in addition to celebrating other holidays, I was raised Jewish, so some of those holidays are still part of my practice, but it adds on to that by following what we call the pagan wheel of the year, where we have 8 holidays around the year that are quite old and which celebrate the changes of the season, changes in the agricultural cycle, and really have beautiful celebrations to usher in those different transitions of time. In addition to that, a lot of pagans like me pay a lot of attention to the moon. It is cliche, but true. And so celebrating the different cycles of the moon and different phases of the moon is very, very sacred to me as well. It's really about seeing the divinity that is in everything, that's in you, that's in me, and that is in the natural world around us.
So what sort of practice? Well, actually, let me get to Halloween here. This is of course Halloween. You said that there are 8 holidays around the year. This is one I'm assuming that is associated with harvest, or is it the end of summer? What does Halloween mean to you?
Sure. So Halloween is a holiday that we call Samhain. It looks like it's spelled Samhain, and some people pronounce it that way, but the old pronunciation is Samhain. And this is a holiday that essentially celebrates this time of year when we say the veil between worlds is thinnest. And it's believed that this is a time that we can communicate with our ancestors, we can honor those who have passed, doing things like having ancestor altars, having beautiful meals for them, leaving out offerings for them, remembering them, and sometimes asking them for guidance and for help. So it's a very sacred holiday, in addition to it being a time when we still like to watch horror movies and eat candy like everyone else.
So where did this come from, Halloween?
So it's kind of a long story, but the truncated version of it is Halloween as we know it now in North America primarily was imported from Irish immigrants roughly 150-ish, 200-ish years ago. And these immigrants were bringing with them different Celtic practices that they and their ancestors celebrated, primarily in the region of Ireland, Scotland, the Isle of Man. And so it is an old holiday that, because they believed that the spirits were emerging at this time, some of these spirits were believed to be very benevolent. Other ones, maybe not so much. And so people would dress in costume to try to trick the spirits into believing that we were one of them. And so they wouldn't mess with us too much or cause too much mischief. So that's basically the old derivation of why we dress up in costume.
We're talking with Pam Grossman, writer, curator, teacher of magical practice and history, host of the Witch Wave podcast, author of latest book, Waking the Witch, Reflections on Women, Magic, and Power. PamGrossman.com is the website. Pam, speak briefly about the politics of paganism and witchcraft and basically kind of non-standard, non-Judeo-Christian religions in America.
That's right. I mean, I would say that paganism, it doesn't necessarily have to be a substitute for other religions. There are a lot of people who, like me, use the word witch or use the word pagan as an additive. So you can still be a pagan Buddhist or a pagan Jew. So just one area that I wanted to clarify a little bit, though certainly some people turn to paganism because the way that they were raised in whatever religion that they might have grown up with, or perhaps they weren't raised with any at all, have gravitated towards this path as an alternative. So it can be additive or it can be alternative. But essentially, it's a path that has become more popular in recent years because I think that when, historically speaking, when there is mass mistrust of the institutions that we are supposed to think are there to take care of us, we see historically people turn towards other alternatives. And right now, there are many reasons why we might feel some mistrust or disappointment in certain big religious structures, in our government structures, in big economic structures, certainly in big capitalist business structures. And so for a lot of us, trying to celebrate the real divine inherent value that nature has and that we believe all creatures have and all humans have is something that is not only deeply spiritually fortifying, but it is absolutely political, because it shows that there is this alternative to this top-down notion of power that's so popular, which often exploits people on the margins, exploits people of color, queer people, women, and certainly exploits our planet.
Yeah, brilliant. Pam Grossman is the author of Waking the Witch, Reflections on Women, Magic, and Power, host of the Witch Wave podcast. Sean's a big fan of your podcast, by the way. PamGrossman.com, the website. Phantasmophile on Twitter. Pam, thanks a lot for dropping by again. It's great talking with you.